Hi, everyone, and welcome to this wealthmanagement.com Fast Chat. I'm David Armstrong, the editor of wealthmanagement.com. And today we're speaking to Ali Wallace, who's the managing director and the global head of capital markets at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. Ali, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about capital markets and why it's an important team in the functioning of ETFs or how you trade ETFs.
So actually, capital markets is quite unique to ETFs in general. So if you think about like products to ETFs, so considering mutual funds, really the tradability element of an ETF stands out. So if you think about capital markets is really working to create a healthy and promote a healthy trading ecosystem for your ETFs. So it really serves as the center point of contact between two really important parties of people. So first on one side is the liquidity providers, the custodians, the exchanges, how money's coming in and out of the fund. And then on the second, the other very important counterparty being our clients. To dig a little bit deeper just into that overall, really capital markets is the main point of contact for everything when it comes to trading. And trading really is broken down into two main aspects. So that's primary market trading. And as I mentioned, that's really dealing with your counterparts of your liquidity providers, your custodians, how and when money is coming in and out of the fund. And then the other part being secondary market trading. So that's really the on-exchange liquidity. So that's how the ETF trades, the bid-ask spread, the depth of liquidity that's out there for your ETF. So really the capital markets function is ensuring that your ETF, when you go out and actually try to buy it from a client perspective, that there's that healthy trading ecosystem that exists, and the client experience is the best that can be made from it in that execution standpoint.
So tell me a little bit more about that client expectation and experience, and what maybe advisors should be thinking about, or how you support advisors when they're trading ETFs.
So, and that can be a wide range of areas and how you actually support it. So for example, we had a client recently come to us that had very little actual experience in ETFs, if not any, and they had the actual interest in expanding their portfolio and including ETFs. So we kind of did a soup to nuts overall, just what an ETF is, the expense ratio, how to access liquidity, when to trade it. So that was a full, obviously, educational experience on the ETF structure. Actually, following that, they want to continue trading ETFs. So we introduced them to liquidity providers so that they can actually continue to do that for their own portfolio. But that looks very different from all different client bases. So for a client that actually has a lot of experience in trading ETFs, they obviously don't need that full ETF education. So we're really focused on actually that client execution when they're trading the ETFs, so the trade execution. So really a good capital markets team is looking to maximize the liquidity of their ETFs as well as minimize the actual client trading costs.
And that's important. What consideration should advisors use? I mean, you talked a little bit about what the advice you gave to this client. What kind of consideration should advisors think about before placing ETF trades?
So we really talk about it from like three main questions. So it's the what, the when, and the how. What is really looking at do you understand the actual ETF and its underlying assets that you're actually going out to purchase. And that is really looking at the liquidity profile of the underlying assets of the ETF. So when you look at it, the actual on-exchange liquidity or that secondary market volume that you see on screen, that's only one indicator of how liquid an ETF is. So if you go into the underlines and what the ETF actually holds and analyze that liquidity, that really gives you a better understanding of the overall liquidity of the ETF for the long term. Oh, so if you look at the next being the when is actually a very important factor when you're going to look at different time zones of the underlying assets in the ETF. So if you are looking to trade an ETF that has a lot of Europe exposure, you want to ensure that you're accessing the underlying assets when it has access to the most liquidity. So you likely trade that ETF in the morning session. We would recommend during the New York morning session when the European market is still open. So that is another part of the function that we really try to look at is really that when. And then the last is the how. So all clients have different benchmarks and how they are actually looking to invest. So we're really looking and working with them to ensure that when they place the trade, the how of how they do it is taken into consideration. So is that a risk trade? Is that a NAV-based trade? We really want to ensure that we're meeting their overall needs from a benchmark perspective as well.
It sounds incredibly helpful for advisory teams. What's the best way advisors can work with you?
So actually, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of the center point. So we have access to all the different groups and really work across the organization. So we're in constant contact with our sales team as well as our ETF specialists. So if clients already have coverage from a Morgan Stanley sales contact, they can feel free to reach out, and we will actually be in constant contact with them to be able to receive any questions or actually get on the phone for further conversation. And if you don't have a Morgan Stanley contact, we actually have a number on our ETF website that any questions actually that you call on that, it'll get directed to us. So the capital markets function is really here for clients, as I mentioned, for the execution and the ongoing education. So they really should feel empowered to use this.
That's fantastic. Ali Wallace, thanks very much for joining us on this Fast Chat.
Thank you so much.
It's been Ali Wallace, the Managing Director, Global Head of Capital Markets at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. Thank you for listening.